little over a week ago, I made a video titled 25 Things You Missed in the Stephen King's It trailer. Here's a link if you missed it. And in that video, I asked you guys to offer up your input in the comments, and I got an amazing response. You all had a lot of insightful thoughts about the trailer and things I didn't catch in my initial video. I've also been rereading the book, and it's been making me appreciate the finer details of the trailer even more. I read through all the comments in that video, which at the time of writing, there are over 1,000, so huge thank you for all the support on that one. And I picked out some favorites to talk about in this video. Now, a lot of you had interesting ideas about the meaning behind all the astronomy references, and I'm going to save those theories for the end of this video because they may go into spoiler territory, at least for the book. But don't worry, I'll give you a spoiler alert before I get there. Here are 12 things I missed in the Stephen King's It trailer. The biggest thing I missed in my initial video was the setting. This upcoming film actually takes place in the 80s. Apologies for that misinformation on my part, and thank you to each and every one of you that pointed this out in the comments. All 2 billion of you, thank you for pointing out that this movie takes place in the 80s. A couple of you let me know more specifically that the film takes place in 1989, and this is backed up by the technology you see in the trailer and the fact that you can just look it up online. It takes place in the 80s. But what's more interesting to me is why the filmmakers have chosen the 80s for this film. Many of you confirm my suspicion that the book will be split into 2 movies, meaning that the second movie will take place in 2016, the same year that part 1 was in production. When you consider the fact that the first movie is technically a flashback, that kind of makes this whole reboot series a modern-day remake of It, an interesting choice when you consider the significance of creepy clowns in our culture today, such as the Staten Island Clown and his many copycats over the last few years. We'll see if that plays into the second film at all. I'll never forget that scene in the adult portion of the miniseries where Ben notices Pennywise on the side of the road, something that seemed to happen quite a lot in America in October 2016. This is our next item. The film is scheduled to release September 8th, 2017. You might be wondering, CZ, how did you miss this? It says it right there. Well, it's not the release date that I missed, but rather the significance behind it. In the story, It returns to the town every 27 years to terrorize Derry. Commenter Cynical Cat Lady points out, the first screen adaptation of It was first aired in 1990, and 27 years later, the infamous dancing clown is re-emerging to breathe fresh terror into a new generation, just as he does in the novel. To me, that is so cool. That's perfect timing for a new movie. I love when movies take real time into account. In my video, I mentioned how Pennywise's eyes don't show up in the reflection. Some of you mentioned that this could just be because the eyes are enhanced in visual effects, and they didn't want to do the effect in the reflection as well. That is something that crossed my mind, having done quite a bit of visual effects myself. But then I saw this comment, which doesn't make any sense, but it got me thinking about the novel and how it doesn't have a shadow. So maybe no eyes in the reflection is the film manifestation of that, or at the very least, one of those choices that's easy to make because you know it's going to save you a lot of money in visual effects. Oftentimes, the reasoning for a choice made in a film is something simple like that. For example, I questioned what that key might have been around Beverly's neck. A commenter named When the Sky Turns Dark points out that it may just be her house key, which she needs to keep with her because unlike many of the others, she might not have someone home all the time who can let her in. We already know her dad is unreliable, and she may just use the necklace for the key because her dad would beat her if she ever lost it. Here's another thing I got wrong. I pointed out these flower beds in the wide shot and said they were arrows. Many of you took a closer look and discovered that they are actually crosses. While we're on this landscape shot, I have to admire the choice of location. This is a town called Port Hope in Ontario, Canada, one of the 3 Canadian cities where the movie was filmed. You can see much more clearly here that they are indeed crosses, and as a couple of you speculated, that's because of the church right across the street. The park over here is called Memorial Park. And I'm sure there are plenty of memorial parks across North America, but that is also the name of the often mentioned location in Derry in the book. It's more of a coincidence than anything that would be super important to the movie, but I found it interesting nonetheless. Another useless but interesting location I noticed was right across the street from Memorial Park. There's a restaurant called Turtle John's. There are constant references to the turtle in the novel, and I'll actually discuss that more in detail a little bit later in the video. There's also this canal, which will play the part of the offshoot of the Kenduskeag stream that runs through Derry. Not only is this where Ben first meets Pennywise in the book, but I was checking out some of the photos of the canal, and it's shallow enough to wade in. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is also the location for the Barrens, which, if you aren't familiar with it, is the place that the group basically bonds and becomes friends when they get in trouble for building a dam downstream. Again, it's not like a deal breaker for the movie, but it's just a nice touch when the locations are actually connected in a film, especially one that focuses so much on the town that it's located in and has scenes that move from one location to another. There's also a library right in the center of town here, which brings me to the next thing I missed. So in the miniseries, Richie has his confrontation with Pennywise in the library, which is obviously an iconic scene. In the novel, however, it's Ben who spends all of his time at the library, especially before he becomes friends with the other 6 kids. He's at the library on the last day of school, which is what it would seem they're depicting here. For the record, in the book, he's also the one who goes back to the library as an adult, seeing as how it was like his safe haven from the bullies as a child. The flooded basement scene in the trailer sparked some debate in the comments as to whose basement it was. I naturally thought it was the Denborough basement just because Bill is down there by himself when he encounters the illusion of Georgie. Some people suggested it could be the 29 Neibolt basement. I don't think that's too likely considering the modern appliances seen here, and this guy, Taylor TV, brings up another good point, which is that it would make sense that he encounters Georgie in the cellar, because in the first chapter, Bill sends him down to get the turtle wax, which we'll get back to, essentially sending him to his own doom in a way. So it takes advantage of this by using Georgie's image in the basement to guilt his brother. Seems like a logical way of looking at it. Okay, before I get into the astronomy stuff, there are a few things that people brought up that were not things that I missed, but things that I didn't really think anyone would miss, so I'll just list those off real quick. This could be the leper that Eddie sees at 29 Neibolt. This could be a depiction of the Black Spot fire. It also might be a replacement for the junkyard bird scene. I actually wouldn't really mind if it was. Bill doesn't stutter at all in the trailer, but I'm not too worried about that. I feel like the trailer was just cut with good audio from him to make it flow better. With that out of the way, this next part is going to contain some spoilers for the book regarding the origin of it, so if you don't want to hear, I'll see you in the next video, assuming we both survive. Okay, so you guys have been telling me that you think the astronomy stuff is a reference to the fact that it came to Earth from outer space. This ties into the whole subplot of how it is basically the Stephen King equivalent of Satan, and how the counterbalance is the turtle, which is like the creator of all things. I'm not going to dig too deep into the lore for the sake of simplicity, but basically what you need to know is that both it and the turtle come from this void in outer space. Looking at the trailer with this information, I started to notice even more references to outer space scattered throughout Derry. There were some people in the comments who were not buying into this because of the fact that in the first scene with the Denborough brothers, Bill seems to have sealed Georgie's boat with gulf wax, as opposed to the turtle wax that Georgie fetches from the cellar in the book. So their argument is that the filmmakers only really have a reason to do this if they're not going to feature the turtle and the ritual and stuff. I don't think this will be the case. The ending of the TV miniseries is widely considered to be its weakest point, and it doesn't include the ritual. Also, with this movie taking place in a different decade, it stands to reason that different products would be more relevant in another time period. And with the new time period comes a new audience and new fans. So if you're an It fan, new or old, be sure to drop me a like on this video. And if you're new to the channel, my name is CZ, and I'm actually the greatest director of all time. I know a lot of people are going to get triggered by me saying that, but even Obama himself has agreed. So if you're into the scary stuff, then remember to subscribe to CZ's World for new horrors every week. Yes, we're making the jump to weekly content. I was planning on making the shift later this year, but you guys are killing it with all the support right now. You're just killing it like John Wayne Gacy out there. So I'm going to try and push out the weekly content a little bit early. Don't be mad if I miss a week in the early going here. And make sure you ring that death bell for notifications, and I'll see you in the next one, assuming we both survive.